One of the things I hear repeatedly as I connect with school leaders around the country is that they're feeling mounting pressure to do something to strengthen physical security. And while detection technology, more on that in a minute, is becoming a much bigger part of those conversations, many school leaders are just trying to figure out where it fits within a truly comprehensive approach to school safety. Today's guest, Tom McDermott, brings a unique perspective to this evolving conversation that balances innovation, practicality, and the importance of creating environments that are both secure and welcoming. Through his work as K 12 safety and security coach at CEIA USA, Tom's helped schools and districts think beyond simply purchasing equipment to focusing instead on how technology, planning, training, and community trust have to work together to support effective safety outcomes. I'm excited to talk to Tom today about what it means to prioritize physical security while still remembering that technology alone is never the solution. Tom, welcome to the Sound Off.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Good to be here.
It's great to have you back. And that's what I really want to dig into today in conversation. How do we address that? How do we make technology work for us to keep schools safe and sound? But before we dig into that, you know the drill here. And you've been on the show before. You've shared your superpower. This time, I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit different. What would be something that would surprise us all to know about the detection technology expert joining us today on the Sound Off?
It would surprise pretty much everybody in this audience um, that I have a unique ability to help people figure out where they can make their greatest impact on the world. Either helping people realize that or helping, in your case, validate that.
Mhm.
There's something, an underlying trait that, in my belief, can lead people to where they can make their greatest impact in the world.
That is awesome and true, I would say. I mean, I think the the way we've worked together over the years and the validation of our mission and my work at Safe and Sound, I feel it. I feel it. So that's a good answer. It's a good answer. All right, so let's dig in here. Detection technology. I promised in the intro like a little more info on that, right? So, I'll say most folks that know you in the industry, they're thinking, and if they're watching, they're seeing your background and the stanchions behind you, and they're thinking metal detection. This metal detection for schools, right? And so this is our opportunity, Tom, to really redefine this conversation here. Let's talk about we'll have a little vocabulary lesson here. What's detection technology? What are we talking about?
Well, the underlying science is electromagnetics. Um, Electromagnetics allow us to see, in effect, how metals, as they go through, we can pick up on them. And what's gotten more advanced over the years, is our ability to recognize metals a little differently. Each metal has a different, what we call a metal signature, if you will.
Mhm.
So we could see the different metal types have a different signal, have a different fingerprint. So that helps us. But it's electromagnetics, and there's two basic types, which are passive, which is really seeing a change in the electromagnetic field of the Earth, really, as you go through. The passive electromagnetics can detect ferrous metals, metals that can be magnetized, or active electromagnetics, which we use in all of our detectors, although in some cases we use both. But active electromagnetics can detect ferrous metals and non-ferrous metals, so metals that aren't magnetized, so like alloys and things like that, that can't be magnetized. And some detectors that people see out there in the world can only do passive electromagnetics. So they're missing certain items where all of our detectors can do both.
Okay, so kind of broadening our understanding essentially of what we're talking about in terms of detection, right? And there's a variety of things that this technology allows us to detect, right?
Yeah, and let's be clear too. We're talking about in this case, walk through detection. and walk through either metal detectors or weapons detectors. And really, for us, they're the same. Unfortunately, there's a lot of marketing hype out there and other things, and it confuses people because people think, oh, it's just going to get weapons and it's magic that you could walk through with a refrigerator and it's not going to go off, but we'll happen to find the Swiss Army knife.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And so we my job is to help people understand the difference between metal detection and weapons detection. What does that really mean by weapons detection, and what's best for you? So CHEA always starts, and our team always starts with what's the smallest threat item you want and need to be able to detect, and that's where the conversation should always start. It's not. It's interesting online and discussions that people have, and board meetings, and I watch videos of board meetings to see how they make their decisions about purchasing objects, and they spend all their time on what it doesn't detect. And because people are concerned about getting kids into class on time, so, oh, is it alerting on this, alerting on this, alerting on this, but without understanding why. And so they concentrate on that, which is important. We must get students to class on time.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do security, we need to first understand we need to do a threat assessment, number one, which most schools and districts are not doing. And what is the threat? But then determine what's the smallest threat item you want to be able to detect.
In the context of physical security, threat assessment is not, we're not talking about behavioral threats, right? So we're talking about what risks or potential threats could be coming in physically, in terms of material items, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in most cases, what schools and really even stadiums, live concert venues, theme parks, from a risk assessment standpoint, security is always about assessing the risk, and we're the world is coming to a place where less and less worried about that small threat item, especially in schools. So I mean, a small threat item like a small hobby knife, because it's not what we would consider a mass casualty threat. So
Mhm.
mass casualty threat is the killing of two or more people, right? So a small Swiss Army knife, as an example, a hobby knife, would be very difficult unless you're skilled and know what you're doing, or someone standing still that you could kill two or more people with a hobby knife. It'd be very difficult to do. Can you, injure one person, injure a couple? Sure. But most are worried from a risk assessment standpoint about the mass casualty threat these days, not any threat. And
So
using a school environment as an example, to try and keep out every little potential threat item, there's a couple issues with that. First of all, you have threat items inside the building already. You have scissors, you have other implements that students could grab, from protractors that we used to use to all kinds of things. I could crack a broom handle in half and use that as a spear, and far more dangerous than a Swiss Army knife. So we have to, number one, be realistic about what the threat is and what are we most concerned about. And then, of course, what's a problem for schools is how are we going to spend our dollars to get the greatest return on that, and what's that trade-off?
so it's really
So
like knowing our risks, being able to prioritize our risks, especially against, like, what are we trying to accomplish here? What are our goals, right? And then I would assume, as a school person, making policies around that, how are we gonna use this technology? And then also just making sure everybody knows and understands, because you used the term magic a couple minutes ago, and I think that's really a good point. Like, people kinda look at these things like there's some kinda magic around it, and it's gonna be this magic answer, and we're gonna kinda dig into the fallacies around that, in just a little bit, but I think the way you're laying it out for us is a whole lot more useful and clear.
yeah, and that's my job and our job in the K-12 division with our companies. We don't, honestly, Michelle, we don't want to be or need to be selling this technology into schools. It's a sad reality where we're at. Che is a big global company. We've been doing this, since the '60s. when the company was founded. And we've been securing popes and presidents ever since, and biggest stadiums in the world and leagues, and we're right now securing the World Cup all over North America. But it's about education. So
Yeah.
I'm not a sales guy. I spend my time educating, and that's what we want to do, is help people understand what it is, what it's not, but also helping them make better decisions. So using the example we just talked about, it's every time I ask the question, then I know going in, what the answer is going to be. It's funny, but I have to ask, what's the smallest threat item you need to be able to detect? And with schools, without knowing, because they think it's magic, they'll say, well, guns and knives. Okay, well, which guns and knives? If you think about your own, drawers at home, your kitchen drawers at home, how many different knives do you have in that drawer? As set aside, you don't know guns. Let's just take knives. Which knives? I mean, a paring knife. I mean, a fillet knife. I mean, a fillet knife can be 3 inches long, 6 inches long, but super thin. Is that a wood handle? Is that a plastic handle? So how long is the knife really? Is it a metal handle? So we have to get into those conversations, but it always inevitably gets to, well, all. Okay, no problem. We can do that. I mean, we secure the White House. We secure 95% of airports around the world. Supermax prisons. Only use chat. I mean, the strictest of the strictest. So we could detect. I mean, chances are, a lot of people don't know this. Chances are the food you ate today were protected by us. We've been doing metal detection food processing since the 60s. We patented a technology back in 1968, actually before weapons detection, before walkthrough detection. We patented technology for food processing. Take the tiniest bit of metals in your food, including also pharmaceuticals as well, to make sure there's no metals in your medications as well. So we have a lot of background in detect. So we can detect the tiniest amount of metals, no problem. But what schools don't realize and leaders don't realize, because of the hype that's out there, what does that mean from a practical standpoint, and staffing needs, and what's my physical footprint? As we know, the old adage over the years was, we don't want our schools to look like prisons.
Right.
The reality is, if you want to detect at that level, you really need to. And here's what you need: is a good metal detector that can detect any amount of metal. Okay. Now, just like at the airports, we're not asking you to take your earrings off and everything off. But so we want to be able to discriminate some personal items, but catch any threat item. Okay. So a good metal detector, but you also then have to have x-rays. And this is where people miss. They think, oh, if we just have a good metal detector, we have enough staff that will go through the backpacks, purses, and bags. Yeah, no, that's where you fail. A good metal detector, but the rest is what we call theater. If you're not using x-rays because of human failure, okay, let's take a typical high school. Let's say 1,000 students, okay? Okay, that's but let's say it's an entrance time of 30 minutes. We'll use that simple number of 30 minutes. Okay, you got to look through 1,000 bags in 30 minutes. Well, how much staff do you have to look through that? Number one. But also number two, it's not 1,000 bags. Most students now often are carrying 2 bags. That's 2,000. Well, what about a purse? Oh, and musical instrument. Oh, and athletic gear. Before you know it, you're at 3,500, 4,000 different items you have to look through as you're up against that clock.
Yeah.
So one of the great many things that we've learned over the years is, when you have a couple of variables, this is where gaps can happen. One is screening staff that isn't security trained, doesn't have a lot of background in security, which is in most schools, the people doing the search are just school staff. So now so whenever we see staff that doesn't have a security background, and really that's their job, okay, and up against the clock, okay, is where stuff happens, okay, because we want to move them along so they can get to class on time. Okay, so a couple of things: you're not going to get through all the bags. You're going to miss because you're not security focused, and you're just trying to get students into class on time. So that's where you're going to miss anyway. In addition to that, because of the up against the clock, we naturally begin to profile. Oh, Michelle, she's a great kid. I know she doesn't have any, so I'm going to move her along. So we've seen that over the years. So because of that, we refer to that as security theater. You're giving the perception that that's secure, but it's not. I guarantee you, I can get stuff through in an environment like that any and every time.
Mhm.
So high security checkpoints that are serious about this have a good walk-through metal detector, okay, and an X-ray that is neutral, that is going to go through that and doesn't care who you are, and it will find those potential threat items. That's the only way to do it. But now we're back to like a TSA checkpoint or what it looks like a prison. And that's where you have to have those discussions with people, have to understand that. And they say, okay, no, we don't want that. But what can we have? What can we do that we don't have to have x-rays? And then students can walk through the backpacks and we get into class on time. And that's where weapons detection comes in. And the difference is really we're just focused on a different threat. We're not looking for every little item, but you have to understand that trade-off. So it means some things can get through.
Yeah.
And but where people make the mistake is they think the detector is going to stop everything. Well, it can, okay, it can, but as we know, security is a layered approach. If you go with that standpoint, you want to do a high security checkpoint. If you don't, you really still have to think about a layered approach because even in that case, let's say you have that high security checkpoint, well, someone can still throw something over the fence. Someone could still open the door for someone, as we know that's where threats happen. Someone can shoot a window, there's other things. So to think this is going to stop everything is absurd, but that's why we have a layered approach. But so then what is a weapons detector for? What's the difference? Well, it's just another security layer, right? So it can stop a concealed weapon, a mass casualty threat now. So use it for that, stopping basically think about it this way: any gun that can have a magazine clip or shoot more than one round. Okay. So that's what most schools these days are deciding to do is go in that realm looking for the mass casualty threat instead of looking for every little threat.
Yeah, because we still have to be school at the end of the day. We have to get kids and staff and volunteers in. So those layers that you're referring to, which we, by the way, advocate for, are those other kind of stop gaps to capture, catch, notice some of the other potential threat items or threats.
Yeah, and keep in mind, a detector isn't proactively
Yeah,
talking to students, going into your homes and creating culture and, talking to students about their day and how they're doing, behavioral threat assessments are far better. So the best thing for people to do is think about walkthrough detection as, a seatbelt or an airbag in your car. The crash can still happen. We're there to protect you in case that gun somehow enters the building. Okay. That we're going to catch that. Okay. And we will absolutely 100%. We have settings where you want 100% detection, you want 90%. What do you want? Depends on the threat item. Okay. But we can set it for 100% detection of a particular threat item and we can catch that. So you've got that seatbelt, you've got that airbag. But there's other things you have to do. Again, if people are unlocking doors and leaving doors open or other things, but also human failure. I've got videos. We have videos of where it alerts, but staff didn't do their job. So policies and procedures matter. And there's other things, but the detector, at least our detectors, will do the job. It's just, but there's other things you have to do. But it all starts with what do you want and need to be able to detect, and what are you doing for the other things that it's not going to detect. And that's where we need layered security.
100%. So I love that you're highlighting the people part of this, the layers part of this, the analogy of, car safety. Gosh, we don't just have seatbelts, right? We have multiple other systems, the airbags, the side bags, the alert systems, the crash, I don't even know what it's because it's like potential crash detection,
Yeah, the mirrors, right? The mirrors are detecting you getting too close to someone these days, or cameras in the front, cameras in the rear. automatic braking. There's lots of things that help us
Yeah.
prevent that harm, right? Because of human failure,
Yeah.
right?
Great
And it's
analogy.
just, and so that's where technology is getting better and better and better to help us with that. But there's still always a human element.
So let's talk about give us an example. Walk us through an incident or a would be incident, right? An averted incident, as we like to call them at Safe and Sound. Give us an example of how this technology can be useful and effective.
Sure. So, in a school environment, of course, let's use this example. And so, first of all, yeah, training, policies, and procedures are critical. Critical training, policies, procedures that follow that, because we've seen clearly when it works, and we've seen clearly when those policies and procedures break down. Okay. So the detector is going to alert, and that's true of the airports as well, or any other place you have it. But it's not telling you that there's a threat. It's telling you there's a potential threat. So as a human, we have to mitigate that. What caused that alarm? Was it an innocuous item, or was it a threat item? And a human has to do that still today. Okay. Because we don't know oftentimes between some metal object, is it really a threat or not? A perfect example of that, and a common thing is, depending on what you want to be able to detect, oftentimes these detectors, including ours, will alert on a Chromebook. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
why? And people don't know, oh, it's just a Chrome. No, no. There's a lot more metal in a Chromebook than people realize, and it's the mass. Okay, we'll use the spine, for example, the spine where you open and close it. That spine is a little bigger. That's a pretty big hunk of metal, to be honest with you. But so if that wasn't in the Chromebook, is that piece of metal a threat item or is not a threat item? Okay, kids are bringing metals in for shop class.
Yeah.
They're bringing in these big metal pieces for shop class. Well, that could easily be a knife. I mean, so someone has to mitigate that and say, is this a threat item? Is it not? And so that's one thing we have to do. So you have the student take the backpack off. Let's search the backpack or purse or musical instrument. We have to look through those to determine what caused that. So there's a couple of things that we train. One is have the student remove the backpack so we can search it. However, where many fail is you have to ask the student to transit the detector again, or another detector, what we call secondary screening, transit again to make sure they don't have something on their person. And we've seen it where it fails, where staff mitigates what it is in the bag, but doesn't have the student go back through. Okay. So make the assumption, human failure, make the assumption that it was something in the bag. Okay. And one example, a simple example that did happen, and we had video where a student reported another student with a weapon, and leadership go, how'd they get through? We have detectors. How'd the gun get through? Well, they looked at the video, and that's exactly what happened. Is the detector did its job, it alerted, student went over to secondary screening, staff went through the bag, but didn't have the student retransit to see if something was on their person. And that's how the gun got through. So that's a failure of policies and procedures.
And
Okay.
training. Yeah. Mhm.
The opposite is also true, where good practices and policies and procedures worked, where that did happen. They had the student retransit, and yes, in fact, the weapon was on the person. Another policy and procedure, perfect example is, let's say a student alerted and staff was searching the bag, and they're like, oh, knucklehead, Tom, you forgot to take out your Chromebook. That's what it was. Well, did you retransit with the bag? And by the way, our policy and procedure we recommend is staff holds that bag and they go through. Okay. Because if there's a weapon there, you don't want to hand that back to the student and
Wow.
say, walk, Michelle, walk back through again. Well, no, because if there's a weapon in there, okay, which happens, by the way, and that has happened. We have reports because we talked to these school leaders all the time, where they did hand it back to the student, and it was a back and forth, and then finally they took it and walked through, and they found the weapon.
Wow.
So that's all policies and procedures, but it starts with leadership. There's an old adage in the Midwest that the fish stinks from the head down. Okay. So if it's poor leadership, you're going to have poor policies and procedures, and you're not going to have a good solution. But also the opposite of true. If you have great leadership that really believes in this and takes this seriously, okay, then you will likely, and puts good policies and procedures in place, then you will likely have good outcomes. Okay. And there's lots of evidence about that. But 90 some percent of the time, sometimes I forget, admittedly, but most of the time when I start a session, a training session for a school, I'm going to ask, I'm going to put my hand and say, so how many of you believe there's a need for this? Okay. If not every hand goes up, I'm going to say, well, I don't want to get personal, but any of you that don't believe you should be doing this probably shouldn't be on this team. Okay. Because this is where failures are going to happen if you don't believe it. And we know that.
Right.
And
They won't take it seriously,
they
right?
won't take it seriously. They'll not take the bag seriously when they have to do a bag search. The policy will be, have the student go back through. They're not going to take it seriously. We have examples of where they're just on their cell phone. Okay, where another student happened to overhear a student in a bathroom say, "Oh, I got a gun through." And the student reported, fortunately, he was in the bathroom and he overheard another student talking. He got a gun through the detector. And once again, leadership, they found the gun, found the student because someone reported, thankfully. But when they look back, what happened, the detector did alert, but staff's on their cell phone. They're like this. Didn't do anything. Didn't do anything. It alerted. This student went through. I mean, it's because they're not taking it seriously.
Right,
They're
right.
not taking it seriously. So the doctor has a job to do, but so do you.
Oh, yeah.
But it's leadership. Again, we can only do so much, and it's human. We have to have humans. And anyone that thinks AI is going to solve this problem is sadly mistaken. And that we always say that we don't use AI. By the way, there's nothing artificial about our intelligence. It comes from many, many, many years of engineering, many years of experience, many years of witnessing these kinds of things to see where failures happen, and we try and develop technology to help mitigate that, but you can't do it 100%. Humans have to be involved. So training, policies, and procedures matter.
So let's lean into it. You just brought up AI. Let's lean into kind of the future scape. You and I both know, gosh, the threat landscape has evolved at such a rate. I mean, it's just horrific, right? So and now things, seem to be picking up steam in so many ways across society. So as technology changes, as AI emerges as part of our reality, information becomes more accessible to individuals. What do we need to be thinking about as that threat landscape continues to evolve? And what kind of changes do you think are going to have the biggest impact, whether positively or negatively, on school safety, let's say in the next 5 years?
Yeah, there's wow, we could spend the day talking about this topic. So first of all, I'm a tech guy. I've been in tech since I want to date myself, but since the early '80s. I've been teaching tech since then. Um, so I believe in AI. I believe in things it can do, but it's not applicable, as we're learning, for everything. It's not foolproof. So are there things it can do? Is it going to get better? For sure. So that's one thing. Know that it's not perfect. Know that it's not ideal for every situation. And in our case, we don't believe it's suited for walkthrough weapons detection. Reason being is AI, a proper AI model, if you think about it, is something real time model that it's really learning in real time to try and determine what you've asked it to do. Well, we don't want it guessing. Yeah, we've learned a lot over the years about detection. Again, we patent it, remember, in food processing, pharmaceuticals. We've been at this a long, long time. So that's why we say there's nothing artificial about our intelligence. And it isn't just engineering, it's experience with humans and customers and different things. We learn through that in the real world what works and what doesn't. And we don't believe today, anyway, that we should be guessing at what the threat may or may not be. So for us, that's not realistic. And from the another end of the spectrum, though, again, but I believe in AI. I believe in what it might be able to do for us in the future in all kinds of areas in our lives. But just for us in this particular case in the walkthrough, we don't believe in it for the foreseeable future. But the other side of that is complete side of that is to me, school leaders don't even understand basic metal detection, weapons detection. Now you bring in AI. These are not science experts that we're talking about. And they're assuming that if somebody markets an AI solution, well, it must work. It's AI. And they're saying it works, so it must work. They're not doing their research to validate what it detects and what it doesn't detect. And you can't take that manufacturer's word for it. Okay. So research is critical. And this is where school leaders fall down, even in the basics. They often don't have security directors, which is a whole problem, right? They're having their athletic director or maintenance director or others do their research on this. And that's to me the biggest problem. Forget even AI, forget where it's going. We have to get people to do even basic research on this and compare technologies, compare manufacturers, and they're not taking it serious. So again, this is where leadership comes in. How serious are you taking this? And are you just putting detection in to placate people and to say, hey, oh, yeah, we're doing something? And is it security theater or is it really a thoughtful research and determining outcomes and really implementing it in a thoughtful, phased approach with a comprehensive, layered security model? And sadly, not enough are doing that. And it takes money for sure. The bigger districts do it better, not all, but implementing a thoughtful strategy and a comprehensive plan for layered approach. So many are, but many are not. In these smaller districts, they don't have the budgets. But sadly, they're making snap decisions about technology without doing a thoughtful approach to and doing the research. And again, not just metal detection or weapons detection, but in the layered security model and doing a proper threat assessment. Where's the threat assessment? Do we need more SROs? Do we need more human behavior, behavioral staff that understands human behavior and kids are having problems and, human detection is always better than, walk through metal detection, noticing that child that is struggling, doing something about, right? We've seen so many cases, as you well know, where we didn't pay attention to the signals. They're there. Every mass shooting, there are plenty of behavioral signals that this can happen that we're not paying attention to.
Yeah, paying attention 100% and really never resting on one particular discipline, idea, skill set, strategy, right? That's that whole comprehensive approach that we're talking about.
Yeah. And that, which is why I often say, we're like the airbag or the seatbelt,
Yeah.
right? But if you're drunk driving and you're not paying attention, it could happen to you, but we're there, just in case that these other things fail and human failure, we're there to let you know, hey, there's something you've got to mitigate, but you still have a job to do.
So, Tom, as we wrap this combo up, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to give us think school leaders. We got a lot of school leaders listening to today's episode. So, and those leaders come in all different, from all different disciplines. You rattled off SROs, school counselors. We've got nurses listening. We've got parents. We've got classroom teachers, administrators, on and on. Facilities directors, right? So there's a lot of leaders in the mix here. But when you think about all of them, they're all really focused on how do we make this place as safe and sound as possible. So What would be in 60 seconds the thing you'd want them to take from this combo? What truly makes a security measure or security period? What truly makes security effective in school?
Yeah, well, I touched on earlier about leadership and that it matters, and there's good leadership and bad. So I can have a leader, a good security leader, but if my superintendent isn't really the leader, right, leading the charge in the belief that these are things we need to do, that's where things are going to fail. So it has to start at the very, very top. It has to start at the very, very top and create a culture around this. And again, and in behavioral as well, all of it in a culture of a layered security model. If they don't believe in that and they're just trying to placate, that's where problems are going to happen. Okay. The best districts that have the best security have great superintendents and leadership teams that are working together, as you well know. And this is something you spend a lot of time on, is bringing that community together of the different disciplines and how do we work together to help solve these problems. So we're not doing that, that's where you're going to have problems. So you've got to fight for that. Whoever you are on the team, you've got to fight for that. And when you don't see that on your team, you've got to raise your hand and don't sit quietly in the dark and just shake your head or go home and frustrated and complain. That's where problems are going to happen. It's just like seeing the student write on their notebook or scribble on their notebook about a threat and not doing anything about it. Shame on you. And shame on you as a maintenance director, a nurse, whatever it is. If you're not raising your hand and saying, I've got concerns that we're not doing this together, we're not working as a team, we're not on the same page, there's a problem. So to me, it's leadership and it's everybody working together to solve these problems. They do a threat assessment. What is it? And what layers do we need that are going to best help us with the limited budgets we have to help protect not just students, faculty, and staff, and the broader community in safety and build a culture of safety.
That's it right there. That's the sound off. Thank you so much, Tom McDermott, for joining us to dig into this. I know we're going to have to continue to come back to it. There's a lot to learn, a lot to think about, but it's been a great conversation with you here today. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.